Welcome back everyone to my annual Halloween special, and today we're going to be talking about a modern day horror classic, Scream. When this film came out, it had a lot of buzz. I mean, one of the reasons was the man behind the camera, Wes Craven. The man behind Nightmare on Elm Street was back to give us something new, something creative, something with a very unique twist on the horror genre. And I remember very vividly, I was way too young to check this film out in theater. So me and a couple friends got together on Halloween night and we got the thing on VHS and watched it together, and I was scared shitless back then. But now, rewatching it, I have a very unique take on the film. So what is Scream all about? Well, Scream kicks off with a very chilling and suspenseful opening sequence where we're introduced to what we think is going to be our protagonist, played by Drew Barrymore. She gets a phone call from an unknown person, and what starts as a flirty conversation turns into a horror movie trivia and ultimately a murder. Yeah, because the person calling is actually the killer of this story, and he is obsessed with horror movies. He questions her on horror movies. So immediately you realize that this movie takes place in a world where all the horror cliches are well known, where people watch A Nightmare on Elm Street, where people watch the Friday the 13th series.
Name the killer in Friday the 13th.
Jason! Jason! Jason!
So right there we have a perfect introduction to the entire concept of Scream. It's very self-aware, it makes use of a lot of meta references and even meta humor, to be honest, but it's also a legit slasher movie because she ends up dying horribly, and that intro sequence to me is the most suspenseful sequence of the entire series. I mean, it's always so awful that she actually gets to see her mom and she wants to cry out for help, and just before her mother gets a good look at her, the killer strikes and ultimately kills her and hangs her. And this is where we're also introduced to Ghostface, the idea of Ghostface, the concept of Ghostface, and the amazing costume, because this costume is now a pop culture icon. That brings us to our actual lead actors, because, I mean, let's be frank about this. All the promotional material, all the pictures, all the trailers were really focusing on Drew Barrymore, and she dies like in the first 10 minutes of the film. Our actual lead is Neve Campbell, who plays Sidney Prescott. And right out the gate, I gotta say, Sidney Prescott is one of my favorite horror protagonists. I know. I love me some Laurie Strode action, but you know what? I recently rewatched every single Halloween film, and Laurie Strode does not appear in all of them. Neve Campbell's character, however, not only appears in all of them, but she continues to develop as a character. And you really feel for her. Her mother got butchered, so she's already dealing with this. Something horrible has already happened to her off screen. So now when all these grisly murders take place, she is reminded of that, and there is obviously a connection to her. We're also introduced to three other characters that I just love. First up, David Arquette's Deputy Dewey. I love the guy. He is such a schmuck. He's a klutz. But that's kind of the charm of the character. I mean, he kind of comes off as an imbecile, but as a lovable idiot who has his heart at the right place. Then we got Gail, played by Courtney Cox, who comes off as a complete bitch. She only cares about getting a new story. Very reminiscent of Jake Gyllenhaal's character from Nightcrawler. Seriously. She constantly invades the privacy of other people's lives just to be the first to report on a story. And we got Randy, and naturally I gravitate towards this guy because he's a movie geek, he's obsessed with movie, he always makes references to movies, and he views this entire scenario as a movie, which is awesome. This is where the film really gets meta. And by the way, there are a lot of moments where this movie gets meta. I mean, the gang literally watches Halloween while the actual killer strikes.
You want to play psycho killer? Can I be the helpless victim?
Wes Craven himself has a cameo dressed up sort of like Freddy Krueger. So this movie does have a lot of humor, something that I never picked up on as a kid, but now I just love it. Like, I've grown to love this movie so much more as an adult. I don't think it's really frightening, but it's entertaining as hell. And the characters are actually pretty well written, especially for a horror franchise. Most of the time, you don't care about these people. You're just waiting for the killer to strike. And that's another great thing about this film. What really sets Scream apart from franchises like Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, or even Halloween is the fact that every single Scream movie is a new murder mystery. It's kind of a whodunit story because Ghostface is always changing. It's always a new killer or multiple killers. And we always have a group of suspects. Every single character on screen is a potential suspect. And that's part of the fun of watching these movies. Like narrowing it down. Like, you're the suspect. No, now I totally believe you, but you're the suspect. That's part of the fun. As much as I love all the other franchises, we know who the killer is. It's Michael Myers. It's Jason Voorhees. It's Freddy Krueger. To me, that aspect is what keeps the Scream franchise fresh, while simultaneously keeping characters alive like Sidney Prescott. Ghostface himself, and it doesn't matter who is behind the mask, Ghostface himself is a fucking klutz. I mean, he stumbles, he gets shit thrown at him all the time, he constantly misses his mark. It's kind of funny. It's something out of a Tom and Jerry cartoon. But again, he's not an experienced killer. It's just a high school student in the first film. Well, 2 high school students. And the revelation at the end, I love the fact that it is actually her boyfriend, because I did suspect him at the beginning, but once they caught him and once they let him off the hook, I'm like, yeah, it's gonna be everyone but this guy. So the fact that they were able to throw me a curve, I love that. And of course, the crazy dude, Stuart. This movie also has an amazing pacing because you're constantly interested in the story. The characters are fun, the concept is fun, the kills are gory, Ghostface is an interesting idea, and as a movie fan, you love all of the meta references and even the meta humor. It's a great satire on the entire horror genre, while simultaneously being a horror film itself. Scream really changed the horror genre in general for me. It's one of those unique films where I'm like, yeah, that was extremely original. Which is why I'm gonna say that Scream gets the gold medal. Yeah, it's one of my all-time favorite movies to watch during this season because it's just so much fun. So now I gotta ask you, Scream, are you a fan? Let me know in the comment section below. And thank you guys, as always, for watching. If you like what you see here and you want to see more, then just subscribe.